Hi, I want to begin by dedicating my remarks to Utica's First Globals, the organizers of this wonderful TEDx colloquium. This is for you, and this is also all about you. And believe me, anytime a baby boomer admits that there's anything that's all about anybody but us, that is really a very big deal. The sound of one hand clapping. Thank you. 6. Okay. Now, you promised me that this was going to work. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, so who are we talking about? We're talking about Americans born between the years 1979 and 1994. Already 72 million strong, and I suspect we're going to be extending those years a couple more. And so baby boomers are the largest age cohort at 78 million. I assume that First Globals will get very close to that 78 million. So it's an age cohort to pay close attention to just in terms of sheer size. This is a group that I've discovered over more than a decade of focusing a lot of my polling on them, who already had a planetary sensibility long before they even reached adulthood. So, for example, consider this, that folks born between those years played more soccer than they played Little League or Pop Warner or any other American sport. They were the first to really watch and care about the World Cup, arguably the most important sports event in the world. The technology from MTV to the internet put them in touch with the rest of the world. And so as I was growing up and as I was listening to American rock and wondering if what I was wearing had the Union label and was made in America, this is a group that was growing up actually listening to global music, and that in fact hip-hop, which started as American music, can no longer lay that claim. It is very much a mix of so many global strains that it is indeed global music. From MTV to the internet, you've been introduced to global fashion, to global sports, to global music. Your sensibilities are planetary. We'll see in a second. You consume global brands, and you've started to develop your own networks. And then, with any other age group, history intrudes to define who you are. So as a prime example, one of my favorite college professors, Dr. Kenny, would regale us with stories about how in early December of 1941, he and a bunch of guys were sitting in a dormitory, and they were talking about what young college guys talked about, girls and sports. And then he said that was a Saturday night, and the next morning was Pearl Harbor. And Monday morning, they were all lined up, 2 blocks long outside selective service, to sign up for the draft. History had intruded on that group of 20-somethings. They were not born the greatest generation. They became the greatest generation. And so with this group of First Globals, already planetary in so many ways, there have been 2 major cataclysmic events that define you and that the values that you have learned from these events you will carry on with you for the rest of your lives. The first, of course, is 9/11. And the intriguing thing that I found in polling after 9/11 is that unlike that greatest generation that turned inward after an American attack and said, America, right or wrong, we have to defend our people, our flag, our honor, you turned outward and looked at the rest of the world and wondered, who are these people? Especially these people who look just like us, who wear the same clothes as we do, who listen to the same music. Why do they feel the way they do? So 9/11 helped develop that planetary sensibility. The second came much later, and of course it is the Great Recession. And while recessions come and go, stop and think about this. that if you're 31 years of age today, your entire adult life has been spent in the middle of this great recession, and it has had an impact on you, and more about that later. So let's look at some aspects of this planetary first global group. These are a few questions that I've selected. The first is, how likely is it that you will live or work in a capital of a foreign country at some point during your life? 35% of first globals say that it is likely. That same figure, 35%, say that they expect to live and work in a foreign capital. That is far higher than any other age cohort. What about first globals and their attitudes towards other cultures? Maybe these numbers don't seem impressive. These are the percentages of people in that second group of first globals who say that American culture is inherently superior. Culture of China and Southeast Asia and Africa and the Arab world, a range from 41 to 48%. May not appear to be all that impressive, but when you consider the other age cohorts, those who were born in the 1930s and early 40s, where upwards of 70% feel American culture is inherently superior. My baby boomers, where upwards of 60 and 65% feel that way. Even the next generation in between, Generation X, that I call Nikes, where a majority feel American culture is inherently superior. You sense that there is a tolerance and appreciation for the rest of the world. Down on the bottom, how important is speaking a foreign language fluently to you? The rest of that question is to advance your career or your life goals. 60% say that it is very or somewhat important among our first globals. 33% alone say that it is very important. That is double any other age cohort. Globals in the changing workplace. One of the reasons I decided to write this into a book, because it had appeared in a chapter of an earlier book, but I was reading way too much about how young people in their 20s are not attuned to the workplace. They're not 9 to 5. They're slackers. As I studied, as I employed a number of them, what I discovered is no, they're not 9 to 5 because they're 7 and 24. They're always on. The world is their playing field. That's where the network is. That's where the interests are. That's how business is conducted. I tell stories all the time. I was on the road 2/3 of every year for like 12 years. I would come back and find a bunch of 20-somethings in my office, and I'd say, why do they have a handheld in their left hand and a mouse in their right hand? And I'd be pulled aside. Shh, they're marketing Zogby all over the world. Oh, that's a good thing. Shut up and go into your office. Okay. Why are they on eBay at 3:30 in the afternoon? Because they're saving you money on hardware. All right. Go back on the road, John. You are irrelevant in this world. The fast track to advancement. Now, it may appear to be heady, and for a while it was before this Great Recession. How do I get to be CEO of Zogby International in the next 3 years? Those are the questions I used to get from college interns. Well, first I have to die, was the answer. And then you're on your own after that. Thank you, it encourages me. 85% of this group, far higher than any other group, seek to achieve a useful and beneficial life experience from their workplace. 71%, double the next age cohort, say it's important to do something that changes the world. And they want that opportunity from their workplace. So, how important is it to you to contribute your time and money to an international charity? 62% say that it's very or somewhat important. That is double the next closest age cohort. This is the thing that I find the most impressive of all. I'm going to read it and I'm going to explain it. This generation has a limited capacity for tolerating the slow, churning approach to resolving problems that impact customers and efficiencies, which will ultimately drive them out the door. In spite of their world, their nation, their city, their schools, the nonprofit organizations all around them being dominated by bureaucratic structures that are slow, cumbersome, and even dysfunctional, they are bringing newer models that exist and can both enable and benefit from the special skills that First Globals bring to the table. All of us in our high 30s and older are steeped in verticalism. We see a problem, we move it up the chain. Each rung of the chain, generally the way problems are dealt with in our society, by the time you get to the third link in the chain, that's about 6 months later, everybody's forgotten about the problem, it dies, problem solved. First Globals want immediacy. They see a problem, they want it resolved. Believe me, this is what gives me hope. They are not steeped in verticalism, and they have no patience. A pain in the butt, but hope. By using social networks, they reach out for solutions. And when those solutions come back horizontally, they build consensus in the process. There's wonderful stuff that's being written. You should know this name, Parag Khanna, Khana. That's a book I want you to read. Mine is a book I want you to buy, but their book is a book I want you to read. Parag talks about how to run the world and talks about this kind of horizontalism. Globals in mobility, Alan Blinder, Princeton University, cites this, and he's absolutely correct. Forget about the job economy, the jobs economy, if indeed we define jobs as long-term security. This is not their world, and this is not their mentality as well. Today's 20-somethings will have had 4 gigs by the age of 30 and 10 by the age of 40. But that's only one piece of the mobility. We've already seen the geographic mobility, how many expect to live and work in a foreign capital. 32% of First Globals plan to stay at their current job 3 years or less. And as you look into the future, is your preference to plant roots in a community and settle down, or would you prefer to be mobile in your life? Okay, 46% want to plant roots and settle down, but 20% want to be mobile, and another 34% just simply are not sure. My suggestion to you is what people have been sewing on little cushions for the last several hundred years. Home is where the heart is, actually defines First Globals. Home is where the heart is, not necessarily where you pay your property taxes. They vote. 50% of First Globals voted in 2012. May not seem like a big number, except when you consider that in previous elections, the average presidential elections, 38% did. In addition to that, typically 20-somethings are 17% of the total vote, but in the last 2 presidential elections, 20-somethings have represented 19% of the total. That's several million extra voters. They've been voting Democrat in the 70s and 80s and 90s when we were tracking 20-somethings. They were all over the place. But of late, they've been voting Democrat. So John Kerry won with a 9-point margin over George Bush among 20-somethings. President Obama, Senator Obama in 2008, 36 points over John McCain, 23 points over Mitt Romney. Bottom line here, however, is that they're not so much voting Democrat as they are voting against the GOP. And that's kind of interesting. What happened this last election was extremely close. It was going into the weekend. Because, especially following young people, we didn't know if they were going to turn out to vote. What happened is that young people came out to vote in huge numbers at the end. And it was young women who came out to vote, and it was 71% of them who voted for Barack Obama. And the major reason why was not so much that they weren't disillusioned with Obama, they were, but they feared the GOP, is what they told us. Why? Everybody, young people in particular, are concerned about privacy, and their motto is, government, don't mess with my privacy. I'll screw it up on my own. Thank you. First globals do not distrust government, but there's a growing libertarianism among them. They seek direct involvement through volunteerism and calm opinion and authentic sharing of ideas. I'm going to suggest to you that the debate of the future launched by this millennial group will not be liberal conservative, because those are two circles that no longer touch. The debate of the future is libertarian versus communitarian, and there's where you have a large concentric overlap in those two circles. Singa, this is what disturbs me. College educated, not going anywhere. 12 to 15% of our young globals. I'm troubled by it. We can't afford to be losing the energy, the enthusiasm, the talent, the capacity, and the technical skills. That's why half of what I'm writing these days is prescriptive as well as descriptive. How do we get ourselves to mobilize and take care of this group in particular? This is really interesting. First globals want to be married. 3 out of 4 say that they want marriage to be a part of their lives. However, how likely is it that you'll live apart from your spouse to meet financial responsibilities? 24%, double that of any other age cohort. It's non-existent among those who are 50 and older, but 24% of those who are 18 to 34 years of age. How likely is it you may live in separate countries from your spouse? 16%, again higher, far higher than any other age cohort. How about sharing the raising of children in 2 different locations, including 2 different countries? 15% say that it is likely that that could happen. Home is where your heart is. We said that already. I forgot that that's where it was. Okay. Impact of first global women. This is going to be a very intriguing conversation, because I posed the question about Sheryl Sandberg and her thesis, which is women are their own worst enemy. When it comes to success, women can have it both, the mommy track and the highest levels of a career, but they have to lean in. At the same time, with less fanfare, Gabby Reese's book came out, My Foot is Too Big for the Glass Slipper. Former Olympian, model. She made the conscious decision that when her children were born, they needed her. She was giving up her career. Who do you identify with more? Nationwide, all age groups, we were split down the middle. Of course. When it came to first globals, they ended up 39% to 27% siding with the leaning in thesis. However, and I will suggest to you that this is going to be a really fascinating conversation to be watching over the next 5 to 10 years. Women, global women, 51 to 27, Sheryl Sandberg. First global men, 27, Sheryl Sandberg, 29% identifying with Gabby Reese. Boy, would you like to be a fly on the wall watching that one, huh? Conclusion, too much being written about first globals as 20-somethings. 20-somethings are always 20-somethings. They care about themselves, their appearance, their relationships. That's typical. Too much is written about them as 20-somethings. I decided to write more about the specific values and talents that they bring. It doesn't do any good to bash an entire age cohort. They're destined by their sheer numbers and outstanding talents to lead the world. Let's get busy. Hey, thank you very, very much.